Morning, everyone. Welcome to another Psychomedics online event. Today, we're going to be talking about drug testing policy, the ins and outs for changing times. You know, it's a timely kind of a thing for us to do, obviously, with the various things that are going on in the world today. And we're really pleased to have two people with us that can enlighten us as we go. First, I want to mention we've got or introduce Joe McGuire. Joe's the executive director of the National Drug and Alcohol Screening Association, as well as the CEO for 5 Minutes of Courage, and Sarah Ashby, who's the VP and General Counsel for Psychomedics Corporation. Both of them have been around this business for quite a while. Joe is an acknowledged expert on policy and has consulted for companies and government agencies around the country. Sarah was actually with Psychomedics, left for a bit and has rejoined us. We're happy to have her back, and we'll help host the webinar today. For those of you who may or may not be familiar with Psychomedics, just a quick one-pager. Not going to read everything on here, but we'll say that we are the pioneers for hair testing, and been in business for about 30 years, leading that market, leading innovation in that market, with a lot of patents, 12 to be exact. And a really successful record in legal track record when it's required for the efficacy of hair testing for drug testing. So what we're talking about today, and this is just a few slides to get our minds all in the same mode. Basically what we're talking about is why are we drug test anyway? And I think most of us would agree with everything that we see on the right. We know the facts, we've read the papers. We know the information that we see there. But the thing that's really pretty shocking when you look at it is there were nearly 15 million drug users in the pre-COVID workplace. And we expect now that number obviously would go up. And the question you have to ask yourself is, am I doing enough to make sure that I maintain a drug-free workplace as I recruit new applicants into the company, or as I bring back employees that have been at home, furloughed or for other reasons, or home officing now, and am I doing enough to make sure that when they come back, I maintain my drug-free workplace? When you think about it, there really are four reasons that policy is a hot topic, not just a topic, but a hot topic for today, and the reason that we're doing this event. The first, if we look at the Betty Ford Center, obviously a very well-respected, well-known center for substance abuse treatment. Addiction is a disease of isolation. And if we look at what we've all been through for the past year, it's certainly been isolated. We've been isolated from workplaces. We've been isolated from people we know. We've been out of our normal routines. And for some, the home office experience that some of us have grown to appreciate may actually be more stressful. That sense of isolation and being away from that normal routine. The other thing that we need to think about, we've certainly been thinking about this pandemic through the past year, but in the midst of that, we can't forget there's an epidemic that it's been going on for 20 years or more. And if the data holds true, which there's no reason to believe it won't, those deaths this year are going to go up again. They're going to go up at least to 74,000 and probably above, based on current data from CDC. That's based on some death rates that were measured between May of 2019 and May of 2020. So this is not an epidemic that's waning in intensity. It's one that's actually increasing in intensity. So why review the policies? Well, things have changed. Not only is the epidemic accelerating, the drug mix is changing. So the threat profile today is different than the threat profile was 5 years ago, 4 years ago, 3 years ago. Our data, Psychomedics laboratory data through 2019, before COVID hit, showed us the same thing I think that other labs were seeing, and that was an increase in a couple of pretty dangerous workplace substances, amphetamines and cocaine, and prescription opioids and marijuana falling off some. Certainly marijuana is always going to be around. It will vary between falling and gaining and stay kind of flat over time. Prescription opioids have fallen largely because doctors are just not prescribing them as much, but there are other drugs that are certainly filling the void. If we look at that death rate for synthetic opioids at 38%, that was measured between May 2019 and May 2020. That's a pretty frightening, a pretty frightening development when you think about it. These synthetic opioids, primarily fentanyl, have now found their way back into the marketplace where drugs are being sold, not as augmentation drugs for cocaine and heroin, but as the standalone active ingredient in counterfeit pills. So people that think they're getting a Xanax, or people that think they're getting a Percocet or an oxycodone, may in fact be getting a fentanyl pill pressed to look like one of those. And the death and overdose numbers are certainly an indication that those drugs are hitting the streets and being consumed, and with some pretty dire outcomes. The thing that we need to think about when we think about our policies and programs is, are we testing for fentanyl? It simply won't show up if we're only testing the traditional DOT-5 panel that most companies use today. We'll talk about that later. And then finally, it's a new day. And I think maybe it's a new day, and the subheading for this would be, who knows? Because I don't think any of us do. I think Joe probably has as much or more experience than any of us working in and around Washington over the past few years. She and I talk about this, and it certainly is a new day in Washington, D.C., new regulations, new players in place, and in a sense that maybe there are going to be some changes that could impact the way that we test for drugs moving forward. Mm-hmm. So the takeaways, when we think about it, continuation of the epidemic, some new threats that we really need to be aware of and actively trying to intersect, some exacerbated usage in some cases, some new users in other cases based on the isolation, and then obviously the Washington, D.C. impact.